Peace was signed with ink and silence, but sealed with a woman who never chose to be given away. In the gleaming halls of the United Earth Embassy, beneath domes of glass and stars, humanity celebrated its fragile victory over the war-torn stars of Xavarii. Medals were pinned. Treaties exchanged. Smiles rehearsed. And as part of the peace, a gift was delivered. Lieutenant Jace Rowan, decorated, obedient, scarred by battle, was summoned not for promotion, but to receive a reward. She came in a stasis pod, glowing like a dream and bound like a prisoner. Her name was Shaara. Alien. Royal. Unwilling. To the Confederation, she was a symbol of peace. To her people, a betrayal. And to Jace, she was never meant to be his. But destiny doesn't ask for permission. And what began as political theater soon unraveled into something deeper, something forbidden. Love, when born between enemies, can ignite more than desire. It can set entire galaxies ablaze. The United Earth Embassy on Xavarii 3 shimmered beneath the stars like a cathedral carved from glass and light. Its corridors curved like flowing rivers, casting reflections of alien constellations across polished floors. Everything felt suspended, like time itself was holding its breath. Lieutenant Jace Rowan stepped through the main chamber, a quiet figure wrapped in the sharp lines of a black field uniform. The fabric bore faint burn marks and creases, a silent testimony that this man had seen war, not just negotiations. Around him, alien dignitaries from across the quadrant turned to observe, their expressions hidden behind masks, scales, or holographic veils. No one spoke. The weight of unspoken politics hung in the air. Then a voice broke the stillness. Calm, official, cold. Lieutenant Rowan. Your reward has arrived. Two guards entered, pushing a levitating stasis pod. The chamber dimmed slightly as its energy field shimmered in hues of gold and blue. Inside, lying still, suspended in soft starlight, was not a weapon, nor a relic. She was a woman. And she was not from Earth. Her skin glowed with a soft, lavender sheen, like moonlight through amethyst. Strands of silver-blue hair floated weightlessly around her face, like a halo captured in zero gravity. Her body, graceful and otherworldly, was restrained by golden stasis cuffs at her wrists and ankles, ornate, but firm. Symbols along their edges pulsed in quiet rhythm, whispering of containment, of ownership. Her eyes fluttered open. Deep violet. Wide, searching, luminous with something ancient, as if galaxies had reflected in them before she was ever placed in this pod. Jace took a breath. Stepped closer. For a moment, he said nothing. He didn't look at the guards. Didn't acknowledge the murmurs from the gathered envoys. His gaze remained fixed on her, this being caught between beauty and captivity. And then, softly, almost like he was realizing it for the first time, she's not cargo. The room was steeped in silence, save for the soft hum of atmospheric filters hidden in the walls. Moonlight from Xavarii's twin satellites spilled through the translucent panels, bathing everything in a quiet, silver glow. Jace stood near the console, the debrief casting cold blue light onto his face. He read in silence. Name, Shaara. Title, Royal Bloodline of the Xavarii. Status, last of her house. Official designation, a gesture of peace. Peace, wrapped in a stasis pod. Behind him, A voice sliced gently through the stillness, poised, deliberate. Shaara. Do humans always honor their heroes with living trophies? He didn't answer immediately. His hand lingered on the console as if the data might shift, rewrite itself, offer a better explanation. Jace, quietly. I didn't ask for this. Shaara stepped into the low light, the white fabric of her robe catching the ambient glow. Her movement was graceful, almost rehearsed, like someone born into ceremony and never allowed to forget it. Shaara. Yet here I am. In your quarters. Assigned to your name. She turned, slowly revealing what lay beneath the neckline of her robe, a trail of glowing markings that ran down her spine like living poetry. Not ink. Not scar. Symbols alive with bioluminescent breath, ancient sigils of grief and nobility that pulsed with stories too long for words. Jace watched, unsure where to look. Not because she was alien, but because she was burdened with something sacred. She moved closer, her voice no longer laced with sarcasm, but softened by something older than bitterness. Shaara, gently. They say a Xavarii bride binds through flesh. She looked at him, and in her eyes there was no seduction. Only silence. A silence full of weight. Shaara, whisper. But what we truly give is never seen by the eye. The dining chamber was cloaked in gentle shadow, its walls breathing with faint pulses of ambient starlight. On the long obsidian table, narrow candles burned in shades of blue, their flames weightless, swaying as though underwater. Everything felt suspended: time, sound, expectation. Jace sat quietly at one end, fingers loosely cradling a glass of amber liquid. His posture was still that of a soldier, rigid, composed, but his eyes had softened. Across from him, Shaara sat poised and silent, her elegance not performed, but innate. She held herself like someone born into command, into stories whispered in ancient temples, not war rooms. Between them, silence didn't feel empty. It felt heavy. Tense. Brimming. Then came a voice, lilting from the wall: Mara, the station's resident AI, charmingly invasive. Mara. Compatibility protocol initiated. Studies show shared nourishment enhances bonding. Would you like the lights lowered for improved intimacy? The line hung in the air, absurd and oddly well-timed. Shaara raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping in dry amusement. Shaara. Do all human machines speak like failed poets? Jace cracked a smile. It came unguarded, unexpected, even to him. That tiny break in his armor seemed to shift something in the room. Without a word, he rose. His boots barely made a sound against the dark floor as he walked toward her. She tracked him, calm, unreadable, until he knelt beside her chair, his hands reaching gently for the golden cuffs still binding her wrists. She didn't flinch, but she didn't breathe either. With a soft metallic hiss, the restraints unclasped. The cuffs slipped away, landing on the floor with a quiet clink like shackles no longer needed. Shaara, low, almost a whisper. You trust me, unbound. Jace, even softer. I trust what hasn't lied to me yet. Her violet eyes studied him, not searching for weakness, but for something deeper. Some logic that made sense of this gesture. But there wasn't logic here. Only instinct. only something unspoken taking shape in the quiet. For the first time, the stillness between them changed. Not with tension, but with awareness. A shift. Not yet desire. Not yet trust. But a flicker of recognition that strange electricity when two lives not meant to touch, do. Their hands didn't meet. Their words were few. But the space between them pulsed like a signal neither fully understood, but both felt just the same. The room breathed in blue. Gentle light from Xavarii's moon spilled through the arched window, casting soft patterns across the walls like stardust caught in still motion. The silence wasn't empty, but expectant. Something in the air trembled, waiting. Jace sat at the edge of his bed, shirt unfastened, elbows on knees. Across the chamber, a faint silhouette stirred beneath sheer, luminescent sheets. Shaara. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. The soft bioluminescent trails etched across her skin glowed with a slow, pulsing rhythm like ancient constellations remembering their name. Every few seconds, a shimmer danced across her shoulders, as if her dreams bled light. Then suddenly, she sat up. Not startled. Not afraid. Her movements were fluid, feline. Her gaze locked on Jace steady, unblinking. Her bare feet touched the floor with no sound, and as she crossed the room, the fabric of her robe shimmered faintly like moonlight through water. She stopped in front of him. Shaara, soft, deliberate. On Xavarii, we do not sleep apart. To separate at night, is to forget the bond exists. She reached for him, hand slow, uncertain until her fingers grazed the edge of his jaw. The contact was subtle, electric. Her skin cool and smooth, warming gently against his. Her eyes deep pools of violet fire searched his, not for approval, but for truth. Her hand drifted lower, brushing his collarbone, resting lightly over his chest. Shaara, barely a whisper. Your pulse, it's fast. Is it fear I feel beneath your skin? Or something else? Jace, his voice rough, honest. Maybe both. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. Time folded in on itself, drawn tight around them. Her breath was warm against his face, her presence radiant and strange and beautiful. The symbols along her back began to glow brighter pale gold fire beneath soft lavender skin alive now, as if responding to something unspoken. The room faded. Only them. Only the gravity pulling two souls toward a place neither had names for. Their shadows merged, slow and deliberate. The thin sheets stirred as they sank into each other's orbit, as breath met breath, and the faint hum of the ship's life support became a distant hush, like wind through ancient stars. There were no more questions. Only silence. And in it, the beginning of something they both feared but didn't resist. The control room breathed in silence, all glass and cold light, the hum of suspended data streams folding into the quiet like whispers from another time. Jace stood still, his reflection fractured across floating holograms. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this part of the system. Not reading this. Lines of encrypted files unspooled before him like a slow confession. Denied access. Then overridden. A cascade of redacted reports, interspecies communiques, and sealed diplomatic agreements opened like wounds. His brow furrowed. Then fell. It wasn't a gesture of peace. She was never offered. She was surrendered. Not willingly. Not honorably. The Confederation hadn't negotiated a treaty, they bartered away a royal life. One name, one bloodline, one girl, bound in silence to pay for the sins of war. A flicker. A hidden file. Jace tapped it open. Archival footage, Xavarii Council chamber, years earlier. Shaara stood at the center of a towering obsidian chamber, her figure small against the cold weight of authority. She looked younger, less guarded, but no less defiant. The glowing tattoos along her arms burned brighter as she spoke. Anger swelled beneath her breath. Shaara, recorded. You sit behind crystal walls and call this peace. I call it surrender. The elders said nothing. One shifted. One lowered their eyes. Shaara, recorded. You want silence? Give them your own blood. Not mine. A pause. Her voice broke not from fear, but fury. Shaara, recorded. I was born with fire in my name, and now you hand me over like a trinket. Her markings pulsed hot, gold light against her lavender skin. She stepped forward, shoulders trembling. Shaara, recorded. If I leave this world, it will not be as your offering. It will be as the last truth you buried. The footage cut. Back in the present, Jace stared at the empty air where her image had just vanished. His chest rose slowly, then fell. His hands curled against the console. He understood now. Shaara hadn't been a guest. She was never meant to be part of a new peace. She was the price of it. And somehow, without realizing it, he'd become her jailer. The stars beyond the dome shimmered like ancient embers, quiet, distant, but watching. Inside, the room held its breath. Jace stood near the door, jaw clenched, fingers curled loosely as if holding something invisible between them. His gaze never left her. Shaara stood at the window, the curve of her back outlined in soft celestial light. Her markings, faint but alive, pulsed along her skin as if echoing a memory too deep to forget. His voice cut through the silence, low and steady. Jace. You already knew, didn't you? She didn't answer right away. Just let the question hang in the space between them like a weight suspended by threads. Then, with a voice both bitter and heartbreakingly calm. Shaara. I was the offering. You were the prize. It wasn't accusation. It was fact, the kind that leaves no room for denial. He took a step closer, something soft unraveling in his chest. Jace. Then tell me, what was last night? She turned slowly. Her eyes met his, glowing, but glassy. Like light behind water. Shaara. Everything I wasn't supposed to feel. And nothing I was ever allowed to want. She turned to leave, but he reached for her hand. Not out of impulse, out of refusal. Refusal to let that moment vanish into regret. Fingers touched. Something shifted. No more words. Their lips met, not with ceremony, but with a need that had simmered too long. It was messy. Breathless. Real. His hand traced her jaw like a question. Hers slid up his chest like an answer neither of them were ready to admit. Layer by layer, the barriers fell. Fabric gave way. So did hesitation. They moved together, a tangle of breath and skin, shadow, and light. Her glowing tattoos shimmered brighter with every touch, casting soft pulses onto the sheets, onto his skin, onto the glass above. Outside, the stars wept in silence. Inside they weren't soldier and captive. Not peace offering and protector. Just two beings, aching to feel something real in a galaxy built on lies. And in that fragile moment, they weren't bound by duty. Only by choice. The first light of dawn slips through the high windows of the spaceport, washing the shuttle bay in a cold, silver glow. Steam curls from vents. Engines hum low, waiting. The scent of fuel and static clings to the air like a final warning. Jace moves quickly but quietly, locking down launch parameters with steady hands. Behind him, Shaara stands at the open ramp of the shuttle, wrapped in a dark travel cloak. Her violet eyes scan the hangar, her breath shallow but composed like a storm waiting to break. They had planned every detail. Every code, every guard shift, every second. But plans don't matter when power has a will of its own. Without warning, the alarm shatters the silence. Doors explode open. Boots thunder across metal. From the far corridor, shadows emerge. Xavarii agents, dressed in obsidian armor etched with shimmering sigils of royal command. Their movements are swift, precise, final. Shaara's glow flares along her skin, instinctive, defiant. Shaara, yelling, voice trembling. Jace. Don't follow me. But Jace is already running, already drawing fire, heart hammering louder than the alarms. Jace, shouting back. They don't get to choose who you are. Not anymore. Blaster fire erupts around them. Sparks rain from ruptured conduits. One shot misses Jace's shoulder by inches. He dives behind a container, rolls, fires back, but it's chaos. Controlled, deliberate chaos. Through the haze, he sees her struggling, fighting, but outnumbered. Her eyes lock on his one last time. There's no fear in them. Only sorrow, and something deeper. Love, perhaps. And then she's gone, pulled aboard the Xavarii vessel. Engines flare. The shuttle bay shakes. Jace charges, lunges too late. The launch doors open, the stars flood in, and with a blinding ripple of hyperspace, she vanishes. Only silence remains. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that echoes like a wound. A cold wind murmurs beyond the steel walls of the forgotten outpost. The stars outside hang still, distant and indifferent. Inside, silence wraps itself around the narrow chamber where Jace sits, alone. The lights are dim. Dust drifts lazily through a pale beam from the overhead console. His eyes, once sharp with duty, now hold a quiet ache, command not broken, but waiting. Then it happens. A soft chime. An alert blinks faintly, incoming transmission. No source. No signature. Just a pulse in the void. Jace leans forward. Fingers hover for a breath, then press. A flicker of light. A figure forms. It's her. Shaara appears, haloed in static and starlight. Her image is faded, but her presence unmistakable. She looks older, wiser, but no less radiant. Her voice, when it comes, is barely above a whisper, yet it cuts through the silence like gravity. Shaara, hologram, soft. I found my freedom, Jace. But the price was you. She lowers her gaze for a moment, a gesture heavy with unspoken regret. They gave me a choice too late. But if the stars ever align again, a pause like the universe holding its breath, I won't come as a gift or a symbol. I'll come as myself. And this time, I'll be yours. By my will. By my heart. The hologram flickers and fades. Only the glow of the console remains. Soft. Flickering. Echoing the promise just spoken. Jace doesn't move. He doesn't need to. Somewhere beyond the silence, a star shifts. And in that shift hope lingers. A gift no one expected, became the spark of a forbidden love. Shaara, Princess of Xavarii, offered in the name of peace, was never truly given. And Jace, a soldier weathered by war, never imagined he would hold the fate of a foreign heart in his hands. They met through cautious glances and wordless silences. Between the cracks of politics, betrayal, and unspoken grief, something fragile began to bloom, a feeling neither of them dared name. From sleepless nights under unfamiliar ceilings to whispered truths beneath the sky of alien stars, they found each other not as symbols, but as souls. Yet love, when caught between power and duty, rarely walks away unscathed. Shaara chose freedom. And in doing so, she lost the only person who saw her not as property, but as a person. Her final message drifted through the stars, soft as breath, echoing across the void. If ever the stars align again, I won't return as a gift. I'll return as yours. Because this time, it will be my choice. If their story made you pause even just for a moment in the vastness of space, then don't forget to subscribe to Alien Chronicles, where love, sacrifice, and secrets among the stars are just beginning to unfold. Drop a thought below, because the next story might begin with you.